Have you ever felt really nervous and noticed your heart beating fast or your stomach hurting? Did you know our brain and stomach can actually work together to display anxiety symptoms? Anxiety can make our bodies feel different and cause headaches or make us feel really tired. Thus, by learning about anxiety, we can begin to understand what it is, identify if we experience it, and develop tools to manage it so we can live happy, fulfilling, and productive lives with our anxiety. Welcome to Normalize The Conversation. I'm your host, Francesca Reicherter, and today I'm joined by clinical psychologist, speaker, and author of Generation Anxiety, Dr. Lauren Cook. In this episode, I talk with Dr. Lauren Cook about anxiety and how it can cause physical symptoms like rapid heart rate and stomach distress. She emphasized the importance of understanding anxiety, its warning signs, and who to talk to for help. Dr. Lauren also discussed how to live with anxiety, highlighting strategies like exposure therapy and taking short breaks to improve mental health.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I am very excited for our conversation. But before we begin, I just want to check in. How are you really?
Well, thank you for asking, Fran. I'm doing well, but I hear the exhale in my voice. Life is really busy right now. I'm a new mom. I've got a 1-year-old son. And so I'm adjusting to a new level of the game, and I'm still getting my bearings.
Oh, well, congratulations on being a new mom. It sounds like a very exciting yet stressful time because it's such a big change.
Yes, it is the epitome of the both and. It's like the highest high of your life, and then also feeling like a baby giraffe at the same time, trying to figure it all out. So there we go.
It's really, really difficult when you're stepping into that new space and it's like that unknown and kind of learning as you go. I know for me in much different situations, like I'm in grad school, I'm also a caregiver for my grandmother with Alzheimer's. And anytime something feels unknown, it's like a little bit exciting, but very nerve-wracking. And I noticed that a lot of times it impacts my ability to just breathe.
Same. I mean, even you asking that question, allowed me to slow down for a second and realize, whoo, I've been going fast today, and I think that's true. We just go so fast. We don't allow ourselves to slow down and truly check in with ourselves. And then I think that really can lead to the vicious cycle of anxiety where it just builds up because we're not taking the pause.
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking about this with my younger cousin earlier. I've noticed that I went through this period of feeling a lot lower and more depressed. And as I started coming out of it, it really started manifesting in a lot of anxiety, or I've noticed the anxiety a lot more. And everything, it's like that cycle. One small thing can really trigger this nonstop of my heart racing really fast and just getting to a point where I kind of shut down and I'm not sure what to do because every moment feels so overwhelming and big and permanent.
Yeah, completely. You start to even move out of that fight or flight, but almost to that freeze state, really, where people can even dissociate and feel like they're out of their bodies because it becomes too much. Like our nervous system just taps out and you start to get adrenal fatigue where your body is just exhausted by the constant flood of cortisol and adrenaline. And that's why I talk so much about anxiety being a physical experience. It's not just from the neck up in our brains. It affects our whole bodies, our gut, our stomach, all of it.
It really does. And growing up, I ended up in the hospital a lot when I was having a heart attack, and no one had talked about how it could be anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big thing. A lot of times we don't realize that racing heartbeat or not being able to catch our breath, feeling very fatigued, feeling like our whole body is kind of shutting down. For me, I get a lot of numbness and tingling. My stomach will get really upset. I'll get some migraines, and I every medical option available, taking any test, and couldn't figure it out. So one day, someone said anxiety has physical symptoms, and we need to start learning how to cope. And once you start learning how to recognize that you're dealing with anxiety, recognize the triggers, learning some tools to manage it. Then we'll see if your symptoms are starting to change and everything changed.
Yes, complete it like the light bulb goes off and I missed that as well. I write about that in the book Generation Anxiety. No one was talking with me about it either. And so it makes sense that naturally we look to medical doctors of like, well, I'm having these symptoms, help me explain it. People think they're having a heart attack or they have stomach cancer, all kinds of things, right? Because we're not getting more of an education of how anxiety is so manifested in the body, especially, when you look at like the gut brain axis connection, 95% of our serotonin is housed in our gut, not our brain. And so when you start to look at how this all converges together, take, for example, the fact that 60% of the time there's an overlap between IBS and generalized anxiety, for example. I think a lot of people start to have that light bulb moment of like, oh, this is what it's been all these years. And I think that can be really grounding too, to know like, okay, my body is trying to give me a signal. It's not another physical health condition. It's my body trying to cue me in on this anxiety I'm experiencing.
Yeah, it's really nice to kind of give it a name and know that you haven't been making it up. I know a
Yeah.
lot of times they would be like, "Oh, you're being dramatic. You just don't want to take that test at school. You're
Mm,
making it up. It's all in your head." And to kind of have that moment where it's like, I'm not making it up. I'm not dramatic. This is something that I'm actually experiencing, and there's something I can do. It doesn't always have to feel this way. It's
yeah.
just that like moment of relief. You're like, it can get better for like the first time.
Exactly. There is a pathway through it. Now, I do talk about really openly how it's not about curing anxiety. I think a lot of times people feel like something's wrong with them if they can't make their anxiety go away, and they get really frustrated if it's like, well, I'm doing all the things, why is it still here? I really believe it's about learning more how to, one, live with anxiety sometimes, and two, attach less value to it. I think a lot of people can wait for the anxiety to go away before they start living. And then you see people wait years, sometimes decades, waiting for the anxiety to disappear. And instead, I say, let's still live a meaningful life, even with anxiety in the midst, And I think that's how we can really get our power back from it.
Learning how to live with it and manage it day to day. For me, recognizing that it was never gonna just disappear. I would see all these. Here was the problem. I was scrolling on TikTok and everyone was curing anxiety. And I was like, okay, mine's not going away. I'm using every coping skill. I'm working on cognitive distortions. I'm taking medication. I'm going to therapy. I'm doing anything and everything that everyone's saying works to cure anxiety, and I'm still experiencing it. And it
Mm.
made me feel so isolated, like something, like you said, was wrong with me. And when I learned that, when my therapist finally got through to me and recognized it wasn't just gonna permanently go away, at least not for me. And there were things I could do day to day, even maybe once a week, just to help manage it so that I can enjoy life again. Because for so long, everything was just honestly painful and overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah. And I felt that in my own life as well. Like I'm very open about my particular experience with emetophobia, which is a phobia of vomit. Um very niche, but as I've been sharing more about it, a lot of people have been coming out and saying like I really struggle with it too. And I mean, it was so debilitating for me that it was dictating some of the most major decisions in my life. Like I was ready to say like I don't want to become a parent because I was so petrified of vomit. I mean, from the idea of morning sickness to kids throwing up. And I realize it sounds ridiculous. Like for people who don't experience anxiety or phobias or panic attacks, they hear something like this and they're like, get a grip. But anxiety is not logical. It really feels like our body's hijacking us. And so much of the work I've had to do in my own life, my own treatment, and helping other folks with their treatment of anxiety is just demystifying it, of looking behind the curtain and seeing we can handle discomfort, because so much of anxiety is this fear of being uncomfortable, that the discomfort's not going to go away. But seeing, even though it's not fun, I can handle that. I am resilient to withstand the discomfort. And then life becomes so much more liberated again, right? Because we're no longer living under the thumb of anxiety.
Yeah. I'm so curious, when did you kind of recognize the phobia? And then were you ready to kind of take that step toward managing it?
Yeah, that's a really great double question, because the second piece to that question, it took me a while. I had always known something was kind of off growing up. I was that kid where if another kid threw up in class, like I would have to like leave the classroom, or I was so like disgusted by I felt like such a jerk, right? Like I was not that compassionate kid. I was that kid that was like, get away from me. And I remember like even my friends' parents would get mad at me of like, Lauren, like, come on, like, what is wrong with you? Like, this kid is sick. Be nice to them, right? And I've done a lot of work to realize where my phobia came from. I mean, and I write about that in the book with my experience with my mom and everything growing up. Um, but all that to say, it wasn't until I was in grad school that like the light bulbs started going off of like, this has a name. It's metaphobia. This is a real thing people experience. About like 4% of the population, and mostly skews female, which is really interesting to me. The other thing though, in getting treatment for it, I mean, the most evidence-based treatment is exposure and response prevention therapy, which is exposing yourself to the things that you are afraid of. So I knew I had to have the stamina to get through that treatment. I knew it was going to be literally watching YouTube videos of people vomiting, which was so not fun. I've seen all the movie scenes, Pitch Perfect, The Sandlot, you name it. It really took time to get myself ready for that kind of therapy. But once I did it, it really did demystify it for me. And now it's like come full circle where I do exposure and response prevention treatment with other clients who have a metaphobia. And I always tell my clients, it's like going to the gym and lifting weights. If you give it a long time in between, our muscles get weaker and it's a heavier lift. Even like if it's been a while since I've watched a vomit video, I get a little more like, but it really is like doing our reps, and we just stay engaged with it, and it doesn't let the fear build up again over time like a plaque. So yeah, it's been a journey for me, but I'm really, I don't know, dare I say, like proud of the work that I've done with it, because it's allowed me to become a mom, like something I was never sure would actually happen. And sure enough, I had some morning sickness. I've had the stomach flu. My son has thrown up on me a multitude of times, and it's not fun, but I always feel almost like happy when I'm facing it, because it's like, okay, this isn't controlling my life anymore.
That is amazing, and it's so nice to hear how it started at a place where you didn't recognize it, right? It's not something we always recognize, and it made you feel different. It
Yes.
made you feel different from other kids who maybe were able to kind of run over to the kid throwing up and rub their back or help them clean it up. And when you kind of recognize, I mean, it feels so isolating when you're reacting differently than everyone else. And it's like, what's wrong with me? So to hear you kind of talk about starting there, finally learning, and then the amount of time it took to be ready, because you're not always ready right away. I mean, I refuse to believe that I ever had to do anything. It was just gonna go away. And then, right? And then you start, and it's not that easy either, right? It's not something that you just start working and you follow the treatment plan for a few
Mhm.
days or weeks and it's like gone and amazing. It's something that you're always working on. And it's a step by step, day by day process. It's not
Mhm.
take the magic pill.
Nope, nope. It's doing the work. And I think it's also being compassionate to ourselves that sometimes we're not at a place to do the work, and that's okay. Like sometimes I think we do have to kind of hit our rock bottom of like, okay, I am so exasperated. I can't keep living like this anymore. But then for others of us, like we get very good at avoiding. And that's where I think we kind of have to like ask ourselves, like, okay, have I been avoiding for so long that it's allowed me to really evade discomfort? And now I'm like petrified of discomfort. So it's a dance. And sometimes it's hard to know when to lean in and when to lean out. But I always say, like, if it's going to be traumatic for you to lean into that work, then either give it a pause or like start with very, very, very small steps. We never want to flood. Like I even had a provider once where they wanted me to make myself throw up. And now looking back, it was like, that was not a great call. I don't know why it's doing the little thumbs up on our Zoom screen right now. So you have to be careful with exposure and response prevention work, right? Because you can further traumatize people if you're not taking a trauma-informed approach. It's delicate work.
Yeah, it is, and it's really step by step. You don't have to jump into the pool head first. And if you don't take the big steps and it seems like everyone else is, kind of feel further behind and to recognize it's at your own pace. It's what's right for you. And like you said, having a provider tell you to induce vomiting, that's a really big step. And that's also something that's maybe not always a healthy behavior to start engaging in. So it's really important to find what behaviors are healthy and right for you and at what pace it's healthy and right for you. So for people who are listening and thinking, I wonder if I have a phobia, I wonder if I'm dealing with anxiety or is it a kind of normal level of worry? How can they start to distinguish?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, one of the hallmarks of generalized anxiety versus worrying, general stress, is that the worrying feels out of control. It feels like we can't get a handle on it. And one thing that I think sometimes we can miss diagnostically too is this really debilitating in your life? We all experience different symptoms at different times, but is it debilitating for us where we can't get our work done or we can't connect with our family, whatever that may look like for each of us? And is it causing dysfunction? Are we not able to do the things that we need to do? And is it distressing? Are we upset by it, right? Like, is it causing pain in our lives? Those are all things to pay attention to. And then some of the other hallmark signs, if people are noticing struggles with sleeping for an extended period of time, I mean, diagnostically generalized anxiety disorder, 6 months is typically the criteria that people are looking at versus, I'm feeling really stressed out this week or 2 weeks, even a month. You want to differentiate, is it something going on that's time specific in your life, or is this an overarching pattern of response extended over time? And then the somatic experience is huge too. So if you notice that you experience brain fog a lot, if you are getting migraines frequently, stomach troubles are a hallmark sign of anxiety, whether it's heartburn, IBS, diarrhea, constipation. I have so many folks who vomit in the morning actually when cortisol is the highest. They feel very nauseous in the morning, and something like an antidepressant, I see cut that for folks pretty quickly actually. Further giving evidence to this gut-brain connection. So those are all signs, as well as irritability. People don't talk about irritability as a sign for anxiety or depression, especially for women. And yet it really is often a cue that anxiety and or depression could be present for folks.
Yeah, I'm getting to irritability. My grandma always says to me, she's like, "Why are you suddenly so mean?" And I'm like, I don't know. I'm still very, very anxious today. And it took a while to recognize that sometimes I was more irritable when I was feeling more anxious and wasn't using any of my self-care practices or coping tools or talking to my therapist. I wasn't doing anything to help manage it on a day-to-day. It was increasing the irritability. It was making it really difficult to sleep, which I'm sure was increasing the irritability on top of that. And being able to recognize when these symptoms are starting to get more prevalent and feeling a lot more debilitating and really impacting my life, recognizing like, hey, am I doing something about it? Or have I decided that I don't need to do anything anymore, and recognizing the symptoms coming back stronger?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. It's helpful to build awareness of like, what are my particular cues? Because I think we can just get so caught up in our experience that sometimes it does take us getting to a point where someone's reflecting feedback to us of like, hey, what's going on here? And that's when we have our light bulb moment of like, oh, wait, yep, like I've been feeling this more than I realized.
My friends are always like, okay, when's the last time you slept? What are you feeling right now? Are you feeling very worried? And they
Mhm.
try to ask like questions around the symptoms that they notice I have.
Mm.
Are you breathing okay? Are you catching your breath? Are you having chest pain? They know what questions to ask to kind of bring that awareness to me instead
Uh,
of coming to me saying, because I'm a very defensive person. I wish I wasn't, but I totally am. So for
mm,
them to come at me and be like, you're not using any of your coping skills, you're not managing your anxiety is getting bad. To come to me very like strong and head on, I'm
mm,
going to just like, no, I'm not. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. But if you start kind of pointing out the symptoms a little bit and making me recognize it and kind of come to it on my own, I'm a lot
mm,
more receptive to wanting to talk about it and wanting to start making active changes. Maybe I'm not using the tools that help me, but maybe those tools aren't helping me right now and I need to start adjusting.
mhm, mhm. Those sound like some really good friends. I wish we all had people like that in our lives who are able to gently share feedback so we can receive it. And that's such a normal response, right? Like I think we all kind of have our inner child where if we feel like we're being attacked in some way, like we have our flare up to it, right? I think that's a very natural response to have. And the fact that, it sounds like you've done the work to figure out like, okay, how do I best receive the information? And it sounds like they do a little bit of motivational interviewing with you, which we know is like so much more helpful than telling people what to do. It's like help the person come to their own conclusions. I wish everybody could have relationships like that.
I have to say it was really amazing when we got to that point. For a long time, they had to watch me struggle and they didn't know what to say or what to do. And it kind of scared a lot of them, kind of like separated a bit of distance. And then when we started talking about it more and they started asking me more questions and asking me more personal questions about it, questions they may have been terrified to ask before, knowing that I would answer any question they asked, we started
Mhm.
to build that communication of these are some of the warning signs. And also watching me have an episode where I'm on the floor crying and I can't catch my breath and I don't know what's happening and kind of
Mhm.
witnessing it and then trying different things that they could do. And my one cousin, Bella, love you, Bella, if you're listening, just sat there on the floor next to me and was like, I don't know what to say, but you're not alone. And like that was an amazing thing. So kind of
Mm.
communicating about it, them asking questions, and just all of us willing to be uncomfortable in it has
Yeah.
really I'm so lucky that we've gotten to that point, and I hope everyone one day has, like, that person that's able to help them and able to have that conversation with.
I agree. Well, and I think a huge takeaway in that too is leaning into these conversations together, right? I think people get very nervous to ask questions. I feel like we have been told in a way like it's none of our business or, that's someone's private information. But really, I think, people want to feel cared about and asking questions and trying to understand is a way to express we care. And if someone doesn't want to answer a question, then they won't. But I find a lot of times people actually do want to lean into these conversations. They just need someone to kind of help open that door a little bit. And so I think the more that we can be vulnerable with each other, both in asking each other questions and disclosing the answers to those questions, I feel like our relationships would just go on such a whole other level of closeness. Because I think people talk a lot, but we don't go deep a lot, and I think that's something that's missing.
Yeah. Oh, it's so amazing when you get past those surface level conversations. I noticed in a day to day, I'd be like, "How are you?" And then that would be it.
Mhm.
And when I started asking, like, "How are you really?" and, like, looking at my friends in the eyes or even, like, a stranger in the eyes and, like, I care, and then
Mhm.
I respond, maybe with some validation or, like, understanding, and then it started conversations that weren't just like, "I'm great, hope you have a great day," or "I'm great, school's hard, I'm overwhelmed," and then that's it. Kind of
Mhm.
being able to get more into it. And that helped me learn to recognize my emotions more deeply and go further into the other than like, I'm sad, I'm mad, I'm happy. Being able to
Mhm.
go further into it and what's triggering it in what
Mm.
makes me feel a little bit better. So it's
Mhm.
been really amazing to go deeper. And I will
Mhm.
say, my friends asked me, is it okay if I ask you questions? And that really helped them feel more comfortable. And that
Mhm.
helped me feel more comfortable because I knew it was coming. And I
Mhm.
felt I had the space to say yes or no, like I was still in control because it was really scary to have these conversations for the first time. And
Yeah.
it helped open that communication that they knew, yeah, it was okay to ask me questions, and I knew that I also could stop answering questions because they didn't want to push my limits by asking if it was okay.
Mhm. Mhm. Oh, that's beautiful. That Fran, you just need to keep teaching the world how you do this because so many people, I see with my own clients and things like that are missing those relationships. And I think we've lost touch with how to do that in some ways sometimes. I think part of it is social media, part of it is an aftershock of the pandemic. Like the social anxiety has just gone through the roof. I think, have forgotten how to be with each other. We've become very conflict averse, and especially for people who struggle with anxiety, conflict is a huge trigger. There's a reason people pleasing and anxiety go so hand in hand. And that can lead to a lot of really safe conversations. But the thing about safe conversations is they don't go deeper. They don't build like deep closeness. And so just the fact you talking about this, I think is a wonderful thing that will hopefully give other people courage to have these conversations. Cause I know as people are hearing this right now, they're thinking of somebody like either they want to ask some questions to, or they're like, oh, I really want to open up to that person, but I haven't known how to.
It's so amazing what a great support system can be when communication and building those relationships. But in addition to that, what are some other tools people can use to begin managing their anxiety on a day to day?
Mhm, mhm. So I have a chapter in Generation Anxiety about this with over 100 ideas that people can do. The main idea being is that we really, I think, need to take a holistic approach to our healing, that we can't just cognitively work on resolving anxiety. Now, the cognitive piece is huge. Like you mentioned, cognitive distortions, building awareness of our thoughts, challenging those cognitions. It's a huge piece of the puzzle. Don't get me wrong. But I do think body work is important too. And it's everything from getting your blood work done. I can't shout that from the rooftops enough. Like, find out what your body is trying to tell you from a data standpoint, because even something like a vitamin D deficiency can very much exacerbate or even create symptoms of anxiety and depression. We also know that getting out in nature, seeing greenery is huge for our mental health. There's even a study that showed seeing a screensaver with greenery in the image to help people experience a mood boost. So if you can today, whoever may be listening right now, get out, see a tree, get some greenery around you, get sunshine on your skin. Our skin needs that sun. Like it is a part of our biology. Um, and start to get curious about the foods that you're eating and drinking, making sure you're hydrated. Our brain, when we are lacking hydration, we don't think as effectively. We're more likely to get triggered. So sometimes it really is coming back to the basics. And then foundationally, we can go on from there.
Yes, I mean, it's the blood work. I remember the first time someone finally okay, I finally went to a primary doctor. Can't blame can't blame the world. That was me. I went to the primary doctor and my blood levels were run, and then my psychiatrist had asked me about it, and I was really low in vitamin D and in progesterone, and those together could cause some of that mood instability. So he
Mhm.
was like, okay, so instead of increasing a mood stabilizer, why don't we look at some supplements and had me on prescription level vitamin D. And
Mm.
after a while, when we saw those levels balanced, my mood was able to balance a little bit better. Not saying that I didn't need a mood stabilizer, but I didn't need to keep increasing at the rate that we thought I needed to based on seeing those blood level results. Also, thankfully, my two states are always Florida or California and LA. So I always have sun, which is well, LA was a little rough for a minute, but and again, and being able to go outside and sit in the sun really does wonders for my mental health. Or going for a walk. I started my morning by going for a walk the day before I sat in the sun for 30 minutes and read these small things that maybe we kind of take for granted sometimes, or we think maybe won't help, actually really do make such a difference. Even if it's going outside, I always tell my mom, like, if you can go outside for like 10 minutes, I know you work, I know you have so many things to do, but if you can find 10 minutes to just stay outside, even if it's walking the dog, it will
Mhm.
make such a difference. But when it's sunny, I'm like, if it's raining, you don't have to go sit outside for 10 minutes. But if it's sunny, it's the sun on your skin, like, it just
Soak it up. Yeah, it makes a huge I mean, that's why we have seasonal affective disorder, right? Like, it really makes an impact on people. So, especially this time of year, like summertime, get out, get some of that sun. And the other thing that I would add, I'm very guilty of this, is to give yourself vacation moments even when you're not on vacation. Like, I am that person where if I'm on holiday, I am totally on holiday. Computer's chucked away, like I'm in it. But if I'm home, I am like in worker mode. And I need to not be so situation dependent, you know? Even as you're talking about this, I'm like, I should go sit on my patio and read for 10 minutes. Why don't I do that? Right. But if I was in Hawaii on a beach chair, I'd be there for hours reading. Right. So I think we have to find ways to bring in that vacation mindset into our Monday through Friday way more.
yes, I love that because it feels my schedule is very flexible until I wear it back. However, it feels really difficult sometimes when you have that packed schedule to find time to do something. But I'm always like, where can you find 30 seconds? Okay, where can you find a minute? And I'll break it down to 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes. Where can I find that time? Because maybe I don't have an extra 30 minutes a day. But if I have at one point, but maybe I have 5 minutes twice that I can go do something. And that makes such an impact. So breaking it down because I had this idea that I needed to have like 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours at night just for self-care. And when that
Mm,
became unrealistic, I was like,
yeah.
well, I can't do anything now.
Right.
And
Mhm.
finding those small moments we can add something in really makes such a difference. And to know that it's okay to do that, you don't have to be on 24/7. You can take those 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes to care for yourself so that you can be on when you need to be on.
Right, right. It's not all or nothing. And I think we can get that way even with self-care, that it's all or nothing when it really doesn't have to be. We can mix it all together.
We can. We've talked about generation anxiety multiple times. So for people listening, can you tell us a little more about it?
Yeah. So, generation anxiety is all about how we can cope and figure out our way through these really unpredictable times that we have been in. I talk about different de identified client experiences that people can hopefully really grab on in their own lives. I bring in the evidence-based research of what's working, what's not working when it comes to treating anxiety. And then I share my own journey of working through anxiety and my own journey of becoming a parent in that. So it was funny. The book came out last year, same year as my son. And I say I had two babies last year, human baby and book baby. But I hope it'll be helpful for people. There's an Audible version as well. And people can get the book wherever they like to buy their books.
That is absolutely amazing. One of my favorite things is books that have kind of like that education piece, that
Mhm.
personal piece, and the resource piece, because I love business book. I love a psychology book, love a self-help book, but I hate how separate everything is. And I have to read like three different books to get that full message that I want. So the fact that you put it all together, I have to say, to me, I love those components. And it helps personalize, it helps see someone else has gone through it and kind of give you hope that I can too. You just absolutely are amazing. If we are wrapping up, do you have a piece of advice you would like to give our listeners?
Oh, well, thank you for creating this space and the work that you're doing, Fran. The main takeaway I would say is don't wait for anxiety to go away to start living your life. We all have things we have wanted to do and maybe we're not. And I think one of the best ways we can check in with ourselves about that is when I get to the end of my life, the way I'm living now, is there anything I would regret about that? Or is there anything I would regret not doing in my life? And that can be such a check in moment of like, oh, I'm maybe putting my life on hold in XYZ ways. And my anxiety has maybe been the reason I'm doing that. So know that you do not have to wait for the anxiety to go away to start living. And in fact, don't wait, or you'll be waiting a while. You can still live an incredibly rich, fulfilling life and feel anxious at the same time doing it.
Thank you so much for listening to Normalize the Conversation. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. This podcast is an initiative of Inspiring My Generation, focusing on normalizing the conversation, bringing education and awareness to the forefront, and amplifying global voices to spark change and hope. Inspiring My Generation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization on a mission towards suicide prevention through awareness, conversation, education, and support. Connect with us on Instagram at Inspiring My Generation and visit our website inspiringmygeneration.org to learn more about our work and how you can make a difference.